The grand ballroom of the Carter Foundation glittered beneath enormous crystal chandeliers, filled with celebrities, politicians, and business leaders from around the world. Cameras flashed endlessly as billionaire Richard Carter welcomed guests to his annual charity gala, an event that raised millions for children's hospitals. Every detail had been planned to perfection. Security teams stood at every entrance, luxury cars lined the streets outside, and private guards quietly watched over Richard's only daughter, 22-year-old Emily Carter. Emily wasn't interested in the attention that came with her family's fortune. She spent most of the evening speaking with volunteers instead of wealthy investors, laughing with children invited from local charities, and helping staff carry supplies backstage whenever she had a chance. Her kindness made her beloved by everyone who worked at the Carter estate. Among those workers was Daniel Brooks. Every evening after the events ended, Daniel quietly pushed his cleaning cart across the polished marble floors. Most guests barely noticed him. To them, he was simply another janitor wearing a faded uniform, a man who emptied trash bins and polished windows long after everyone else had gone home. Daniel preferred it that way. Life had taught him that attention often brought trouble. After losing his wife in a tragic accident years earlier, his entire world revolved around raising his 8-year-old son, Noah. Every morning, Daniel packed Noah's lunch, walked him to school, and reminded him to always be kind to others. At night, after finishing long shifts at the Carter estate, he returned home just in time to read bedtime stories before his son fell asleep. Money was always tight, but Daniel never complained. What nobody at the mansion knew was that before becoming a janitor, Daniel had lived a completely different life. He had served for years as a Navy SEAL, leading dangerous rescue missions in some of the world's most hostile places. His military records remained classified, and after leaving the service, he chose a quiet life far from violence. He buried his medals in a storage box and never spoke about his past, not even to Noah. To Daniel, those days were over. Or so he believed. As the gala continued, Richard Carter stepped onto the stage to thank everyone for their generosity. The audience erupted into applause. Emily smiled proudly from the front row before quietly slipping outside to answer a phone call. She never came back. At first, no one noticed her absence. Guests continued eating, musicians played elegant melodies, and speeches carried on. Nearly 20 minutes later, one of Emily's friends began searching for her. Her phone rang repeatedly but went unanswered. Security footage showed Emily walking into the garden. Then the cameras suddenly went black. Panic spread through the estate. Within minutes, every exit was locked down. Guards searched every room, every hallway, and every vehicle leaving the property. Police arrived with search dogs. Detectives questioned hundreds of guests. Emily Carter had vanished. News helicopters circled above the mansion before sunrise. Television stations interrupted regular programming to report the shocking disappearance of one of the country's most recognizable young women. Richard Carter offered a reward of $50 million for information leading to her safe return. Thousands of tips flooded police hotlines. None of them helped. Professional investigators searched abandoned buildings, monitored airports, tracked financial transactions, and questioned known criminal organizations. Every possible lead collapsed. Richard barely slept. His mansion, once filled with laughter, became silent except for ringing telephones and constant strategy meetings. Every passing hour deepened his fear that he might never see his daughter again. Meanwhile, Daniel quietly continued his nightly cleaning duties. He listened as detectives discussed theories in the hallways. Most believed experienced kidnappers had carefully planned every detail. Others suspected someone inside the estate had leaked security information. Daniel rarely spoke, but he listened carefully. Late one evening, while cleaning near a conference room, he overheard a detective mention something everyone else seemed to ignore. A gardener had found an unusual knot tied to a broken section of rope near the estate's eastern gate. The detective dismissed it as unimportant. Daniel froze. That knot wasn't ordinary. Years earlier, during his military service, Daniel had encountered the exact same style of knot used by a specialized international kidnapping group. It was fast to tie, almost impossible to loosen under pressure, and rarely seen outside elite tactical circles. His heartbeat quickened. Someone involved in Emily's disappearance had professional training. Daniel quietly walked outside after his shift ended and examined photographs of the rope that officers had left on a table. His suspicions grew stronger. Nearby tire tracks showed signs of an unusually heavy vehicle stopping for less than 30 seconds before accelerating away. A faint chemical smell lingered on the rope fibers, reminding him of a particular industrial warehouse district located outside the city. It wasn't proof, but it was enough to make him uneasy. As he drove home that night, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about the clues. When he tucked Noah into bed, his son smiled and asked, "Dad, will everything be okay?" Daniel forced a gentle smile. "I hope so, buddy." After Noah fell asleep, Daniel sat alone in the dark, staring at the old wooden box hidden beneath his bed. Slowly, he opened it. Inside rested faded military photographs, service medals, and a worn tactical watch that hadn't been touched in years. Daniel closed his eyes. He had promised himself he would never return to that life. But somewhere out there, a frightened young woman was waiting for someone to find her. And for the first time in years, Daniel realized the man he used to be might be the only person capable of bringing her home. Before sunrise, Daniel quietly left his small apartment after checking one last time on his sleeping son, Noah. He kissed the boy's forehead, whispered that he loved him, and locked the door behind him. The old tactical watch on his wrist ticked for the first time in years. It reminded him of the man he had once been, a Navy SEAL trained to rescue innocent people from impossible situations. Following the clues he had pieced together, Daniel drove toward an abandoned industrial district on the outskirts of the city. Most of the warehouses had been empty for years, but one building showed signs of recent activity. Fresh tire tracks covered the muddy entrance, and a delivery truck sat parked beside a rusted loading dock. Daniel watched from a distance for nearly an hour. 3 armed men patrolled outside while 2 more stood near the entrance. They moved with discipline, confirming Daniel's suspicion that these were no ordinary criminals. They expected police to search the wrong places, giving them enough time to negotiate the ransom. Daniel knew waiting would only make Emily's situation more dangerous. Using an old maintenance tunnel behind the warehouse, he slipped inside unnoticed. Every movement was silent and controlled. He avoided security cameras, listened carefully to conversations, and slowly worked his way through the dark building. He finally heard Emily's voice. Though frightened, she was alive. The kidnappers argued nearby about the ransom demand. Their leader insisted Richard Carter would pay anything to get his daughter back. They had no idea someone was already inside the warehouse. Daniel acted with calm precision. He quietly distracted one guard, secured another before he could raise an alarm, and reached the room where Emily was being held. She looked exhausted but was unharmed. "I'm here to get you home," Daniel whispered. Emily stared at the janitor in disbelief but immediately trusted the calm confidence in his voice. As they moved toward the exit, one kidnapper spotted them and shouted. The warehouse erupted into chaos. The remaining criminals rushed after them, but Daniel stayed one step ahead, using his training to create opportunities to escape without putting Emily in unnecessary danger. Outside, the noise had already attracted nearby police officers who had been searching the industrial district after receiving an anonymous tip that Daniel himself had quietly sent earlier. Within minutes, officers surrounded the warehouse. Seeing no escape, the kidnappers surrendered one after another. Emily was finally safe. News of the rescue spread across the country within hours. Television stations reported that the billionaire's daughter had been found alive, but everyone was shocked to learn who had rescued her. Not an elite security company. Not a famous detective. A quiet janitor. When Richard Carter rushed to the hospital and saw Emily safe, emotion overwhelmed him. After embracing his daughter, he walked directly to Daniel. "I don't know how I can ever repay you," Richard said, his voice trembling. Daniel smiled gently. "You don't owe me anything. I only did what anyone should do when someone needs help. Richard insisted on offering him millions of dollars, a luxury home, and a senior position within his company. Daniel politely declined every offer. The only thing I really want, he said, is enough time to get home and read my son his bedtime story tonight. Those simple words left everyone speechless. Richard realized that the richest man in the room was not the billionaire surrounded by wealth, but the father who valued love above money. In the weeks that followed, Daniel's heroic actions became national news. Yet he refused interviews and avoided fame. Instead, he returned to his quiet job and the peaceful life he had built with Noah. Richard, however, never forgot what had happened. Without making a public announcement, he created a scholarship foundation in Daniel's late wife's name to support children of military families. He also ensured Noah's education would be fully funded through college, not as payment, but as a heartfelt gesture of gratitude. Daniel accepted only that gift, knowing it would give his son opportunities he could never have afforded alone. Years later, whenever people asked Richard Carter what the greatest investment of his life had been, he never mentioned his companies or fortune. He simply smiled and answered, "Believing that true heroes don't always wear expensive suits. Sometimes they carry a mop, work the night shift, and quietly change lives without asking for anything in return." And every evening, no matter how busy life became, Daniel kept the same promise he had made long ago. He always made it home in time to read Noah one more bedtime story.